So bebop scales are a very popular topic amongst jazz musicians. Bebop scales and bebop ornaments. This video is talking about using bebop scales as a soloist and how you don't need to learn a predetermined list of bebop scales. This does not apply to using bebop scales as a chord player or the kind of Barry Harris sixth diminished stuff. That's a very specific system. I'm showing you a lead approach here, which is far more entry level. Now, the reason I do this with my students is because I remember thinking there was a very specific list. And in fact, if you Google, you will find these lists of this is the bebop scale you play on a major chord. This is the bebop scale you play on a minor chord. This one's the one you play on a minor sixth. This one's the one you play on a dominant. And before you know it, you've got this massive, massive list of scales that seemingly you need to practice every single day. Again, as a chord player, that's a different topic. But I just want to show you today how basically using a combination of your knowledge of chord tones and bebop ornaments is a life-saving little change to your playing where you can basically cover any chord and hit those strong beats. As always, if you don't know your major scale and you don't know the notes of the chords you're trying to play over, this video is too advanced for you. You need to know your major scale, your note names, and chord tones. If that's all you know, you've got enough information for this video. So when we're creating our own bebop scales, there's only one thing that's important, really. And that is that in our bar with 8 notes in it, we're going quavers or 8th beat notes, note 1, 3, 5, and 7 should correlate to 1, 3, 5, and 7 of the chord that you're trying to imply, if it's got a 7th degree in it. We'll talk about exceptions in a second. So beats 1, 3, 5, and 7 correlate to notes 1, 3, 5, and 7 of your chord. Now, if that's all you know, you can already start doing this. For example, if we take a B flat major chord, got major 7 there, and I know that's got to be 1, 3, 5, and 7, beats 1, 3, 5, and 7, then all I need to do is fill in a note on the beats 2, 4, 6, and 8. And you can do that with any ornament you like. Let's just use a little chromatic scoop for this, where I'm just going to come in from a semitone below each one. So I could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the issue I've got here is we've got one more beat left in the bar. I'm on 7. We've got 8 before we get back to 1. I'm going to get there too soon. I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I'm back to beat 1. So again, we just use another bebop ornament to solve the issue. So what we're going to do is an enclosure, which is where you basically go the other side of the note and come back down. So I'm going to play the note C to get me back down to that B flat. So I've got very jazzy sounding line. Okay, so all that is 1, 3, 5, 7 on beats 1, 3, 5, 7, thinking of an 8-beat bar, and then a chromatic approach before 3 of them. Then I can't do a chromatic approach here because it would be the same note twice. It would be, which doesn't sound good. So I've used an enclosure to solve that problem. So that's just one example, and that's going to sound great over a B flat major chord. I'm not worrying about a specific scale. I haven't had to learn a scale. I've just learned what the notes of my chord are, which I should have known already. Again, that's a prerequisite to this video. And I just add a little trick to each one of them, and I've ended up with the effect of a bebop scale. I could also, if I want to be a bit more diatonic, I could just play the major scale and add that same enclosure at the top. 1, 3, 5, 7. Around the top enclosure, 1. So the way the bebop scale solves that is to add the flat 6. We've come up with the same solution, but using a different approach. That sounds great. And these are obviously, once you've done it in 1 octave, you can copy them up, copy and paste them. Like that. Now it's the same descending, so if I stick to my major 7 example, if I've got B flat on beat 1, beat 2 is just going to be A, which is a problem. So we need to have a chord tone, remember, on 1, 3, 5, and 7. We can just do the same thing when we do an enclosure from the root. I'll do this down the octave. So we've got B flat, getting to the A too soon. So instead of going 1, 2, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Problem solved. Okay, so I've now got all my strong beats on 1, 3, 5, and 7 of the bar. 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. Solved that problem. No problem. So that was another diatonic example. Now what if one of the notes you want to imply isn't a 7, for example in a minor 6 chord, like C minor 6. So we've got C, E flat, G and A. Well, we just take the same approach. We try and land those on the strong beats and we just use bebop ornaments to save our bacon really between them. So we've got C on 1, D on 2, E flat on 3. Good start. F on 4, G on 5. We're just going to add a passing note, an ornament of some sort, using our bebop ornaments to add that beat. And it's just going to be, literally in this case, filling in the blank. Or we can add the major 7, depending on what sound you're trying to imply. Okay, so in that instance we had 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. And again we could do this one with a little chromatic ornament into each of them if we want it to be a bit less diatonic. And descending would just do the same idea. The exact notes you use, because they're just an ornament, they're just a passing note, it doesn't really matter whether we're using major 7 or minor 7, especially because obviously the speeds we're generally playing bebop at. In the future you can dial those in and be more specific, but don't let that put you off using these. Just worry about the chord tones. The notes in between, they're just wrong notes anyway, they're just passing notes. When we're playing as a soloist, again, in the harmony approach, those notes do have a more important function. So descending would just be... Great sound, absolutely fantastic. So there's a million ways that you can use this, but long story short, get your important chord tones on 1, 3, 5 and 7 of the bar. If you want to use a 6 or you want to use a sharp 4 or whatever, just line it up so it fits on those beats. Don't be put off because you've seen a spreadsheet of a million different bebop scales. You'll eventually get those down, but this is a way to really dial in your understanding of chord tones. That's something which I massively overlooked in my own journey, is I went straight to scales, because you can just blast over the top with scales and not actually have much of a clue what's going on with the specific chords. This flips that on its head, where the priority is the chord tones and the passing notes are actually relatively unimportant. You'll want to dial in specifics of those along your journey in the future, but again, don't let that put you off using these from the get-go.